You wash your hands without thinking about it. Soap, water, 30 seconds, done. For most of human history, none of that existed. No soap, no running water, no idea that invisible things could make you sick, and yet your ancestors were not filthy, helpless animals waiting to die of infection. For roughly 300,000 years, humans built their own systems of cleanliness long before anyone had ever heard the word germ. So, what did hygiene actually look like before soap, before plumbing, before modern medicine? The answer is stranger, smarter, and more uncomfortable than you might expect. Start with water. Early humans were not wandering aimlessly across the landscape. They were tethered to rivers, lakes, and springs because water meant survival in every sense. Bathing wasn't a luxury ritual, it was constant and incidental. You waded in to cool off. You washed wounds because dirt in a cut clearly made things worse, even if no one understood why. Anthropologist Richard Lee's 1963 study of the Jew/Huanzi people of the Kalahari Desert documented something striking. Hunter gatherers in this tradition spent far less time on basic survival tasks than expected, sometimes only 15 to 20 hours a week securing food. That left time. Time for grooming, time for picking parasites out of each other's hair, a behavior so universal among primates that it shows up in nearly every living relative humans have, from chimpanzees to baboons. Here's where it gets interesting. Grooming wasn't just about being clean, it was social glue, it built trust, it calmed anxious group members. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner, who spent decades studying the Juhuanzi, documented how physical closeness and mutual care, including grooming like behaviors, reinforced the bonds that kept small foraging groups alive through lean seasons. Cleanliness, in other words, was never just about the body, it was about the tribe. But not all ancient humans lived the same way, and that's the part most people get wrong. Picture a Paleolithic camp at dusk. Orange light fading over the grassland. A small group sits near a fire. Someone is working ash and animal fat into a paste. This wasn't soap exactly, but it functioned like one. Ash is alkaline. Fat is greasy. Mixed together, they form a crude surfactant, something that lifts dirt and oil off skin the same basic way soap does today. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe and the Near East shows ash residue near hearths used in exactly this way, alongside fire pits that clearly served more than cooking purposes. Now, jump forward, agriculture changes everything, and not in the way people assume. You'd think permanent settlements meant better hygiene. The opposite happened. Once humans stopped moving and started farming, they began living beside their own waste, beside their animals, in dense, unventilated structures. Parasite loads in skeletal remains from early farming villages spike compared to earlier hunter-gatherer sites. Tooth decay appears almost overnight, geologically speaking, once grain-heavy diets take over. Researcher James Sussman, who has spent years comparing foraging societies to agricultural ones, has argued that the shift to farming actually worsened many aspects of daily life, even as it allowed populations to grow. Settling down didn't mean getting cleaner. It often meant getting sicker. So picture this version of ancient life instead. A cramped mud brick village, animals penned just outside the door, waste pits dug too close to the well, a child coughing in the corner. This is not the postcard image of progress we usually imagine. This is the trade-off nobody warns you about. And yet humans adapted because humans always adapt. Ancient Egyptians developed some of the most sophisticated hygiene practices in the early world. Frequent bathing, perfumed oils, and shaved heads and bodies to prevent lice were common, especially among priests, who were required to bathe multiple times a day before entering temples. The Indus Valley civilization built dedicated bathing platforms and underground drainage systems thousands of years before Rome existed. Excavations at sites like Mohenjo-Daro reveal a great bath, a massive public bathing structure with waterproofed brickwork, suggesting that communal washing wasn't just practical, it was ritual. It mattered enough to build monuments around it. Here's the twist nobody expects. For long stretches of history, the cleanest humans weren't the ones with the most technology. They were the ones who never settled down. Mobile hunter-gatherer groups left their waste behind every time they moved camp. They weren't drinking from water sources contaminated by their own villages. They weren't living in permanent proximity to disease-carrying livestock. Mobility was, accidentally, one of the most effective hygiene systems humans ever had. Civilization didn't invent cleanliness. In many ways, it created the very problems cleanliness now has to solve. Think about that the next time someone romanticizes the rise of cities or assumes that more buildings and more infrastructure automatically meant more health. Density brought disease, permanence brought parasites, and it took thousands of years of trial, observation, and quiet accumulated knowledge, ash mixed with fat, oils scented with herbs, water diverted through stone channels, before humans built their way back out of the mess that settling down had created. What's remarkable is how much of this knowledge existed without any understanding of microbes. Nobody in Mohenjo-Daro knew about bacteria. Nobody at a Paleolithic hearth had heard of pathogens. And yet, generation after generation, humans noticed patterns. Wounds healed better when washed. Groups stayed calmer when groomed. Camps stayed healthier when waste was kept away from water. This is the part that should stop you. Hygiene wasn't handed down by science. It was earned through tens of thousands of years of trial, error, and close observation, passed quietly from one generation to the next, long before anyone could explain why any of it worked. Now think about your own bathroom. The soap dispenser you don't think twice about. The hot water that arrives instantly with no fire, no fetching, no labor at all. None of that is ordinary. It's the end result of an unbroken chain of human bodies figuring out piece by piece how to survive themselves and each other. You wash your hands without thinking about it. Your ancestors thought about almost nothing else.